The dual nature of consciousness. This particular discussion is excerpts from Neville's book, Prayer, the Art of Believing, in which he has a specific chapter called The Dual Nature of Consciousness. In this discussion, we're going to go deeper into the quotes and reflect upon them. The idea behind it is that when we understand and reflect upon what we already know, because many of us already know this information, from a deeper level of realization, that not only will it further affirm as how we believe reality to work, but it also reveals what I call the divine pattern. What are we really doing? Well, I believe that we are aligning with the divine pattern. The idea is that we are already going somewhere, and this is a journey to the destination. Neville also calls this the promise. On the journey to the realization of the ultimate destination, which is actually infinite in nature, so there's always further ultimate destinations, the journey is riddled with what we call experience. And we have the power to choose and create or externalize our experience through what we work with, which is the power of the one consciousness, which includes the subconscious and the conscious. Neville says, a clear concept of the dual nature of man's consciousness must be the basis of all true prayer. Consciousness includes a subconscious as well as a conscious part. The infinitely greater part of consciousness lies below the sphere of objective consciousness. The subconscious is the most powerful part, or as he says, the most important part of our consciousness. It is the cause of voluntary action. The subconscious is what a man is. The conscious is what a man knows. I and my Father are one, but my Father is greater than I. The conscious and subconscious are one, but the subconscious is greater than the conscious. So we create conceptual ideas in the mind, and we label them. We say conscious and subconscious. When we refer to the subconscious mind, we can also refer to it as the subconscious realm. It is what we don't consciously understand yet about ourselves and our relation to what we call the outer world or screen of space. The truth is, we don't have to understand the subconscious mind to a large degree, or even understand the intricacies and the details of how it operates, but rather work with the subconscious to experience different aspects of the subconscious in reality, otherwise known as the vision, what we imagine. What we can imagine already exists, and we receive what we imagine in our conscious mind from the subconscious realm. If we receive it from the subconscious realm, then we can experience it in this screen of space, the outer world experience. This experience happens through what we call a bridge of incidence, a journey that externalizes that particular experience. This experience, that particular experience, is a continuum of experiences. And whether we are consciously aware of this process or not, it is always happening. What we are experiencing right now is an externalization of previous affirmations or assumptions that are impressed or affirmed on our subconscious, which externalize as this particular conversation that we're having right now. Some of you might experience this as a synchronicity. Perhaps you were thinking about what was being discussed here consciously, and that would be an experience that has revealed to you that you are more conscious of your subconscious, as in, when you experience more signs and synchronicities on the journey, you have brought forth a greater degree of understanding of the subconscious part of you, the subconscious realm. Those that bring forth a higher degree of conscious awareness on their subconscious experience more signs and synchronicities and are also able to understand, interpret them, and be inspired by them and guided by them to the realization or the fulfillment of that which we intentionally imagine to create. Now, you can do it this way, but you don't have to do it this way. Neville speaks of affirming what it would look like if it was true till you realize that it is done. We realize, we feel it, that it is done. Then we experience the bridge of incidence. The bridge of incidence is represented by thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and outer world circumstances changing. Everything happens through us. This is how we experience. And this through us is via the subconscious realm. So when we say the conscious and the subconscious are one, this is all happening within the one consciousness, but the subconscious is greater than the conscious, as in most of this is happening through the subconscious. If we try to do this from a place of conscious, we will experience force and resistance. That's why the power is in bringing awareness to where you are right now, not dwelling on the past or creating an unnecessary void between where you are right now in the journey and the future, which we call fears, doubts, and indecision. It's removing that and allowing the authentic expression from within. As a person lives this way, they experience a state of flow, otherwise also state of love, or autotelic being, realizing that it is already done and we are on the journey to the experience. He says, I of myself can do nothing. The Father within me, he doeth the work. I, objective consciousness, of myself can do nothing. The Father, the subconscious, he doeth the work. The subconscious is that in which everything is known, in which everything is possible, to which everything goes, from which everything comes, from which belongs to all, to which all have access. This is the one consciousness that is in all, as in all subconscious minds or subconscious realms are one with each other, as in we are all connected to each other. We experience the connectivity through this outer world interpretation. However, it is all happening within, in our own imagination. Now, the more we affirm this, that we have access to and the ability to work with the subconscious realm, then we will experience it more so through what we call hunches, inspirations, signs, and synchronicities. All we do is allow. If we feel the inspiration, we allow the facilitation of it. It can lead you down a journey which might not make logical sense. Certainly that has been the case for me. One of the things that really helped me understand this is the Steve Jobs commencement speech when he said, follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you want to become. When I first heard this, it resonated with me, resonated very deeply with me. And I began to live by it. And the journey took me to many different aspects of this existence, traveling to different countries, meeting different people. In the process, business growth, dreams and aspirations realized, as well as a deeper level of understanding of the subconscious realm. Thus, I started speaking more about it, the subconscious realm, and directing it towards the attention of entrepreneurs. Because I realized that with entrepreneurship, and Steve Jobs being one of the primary examples of being able to be a successful entrepreneur, revealed in his commencement speech the exact process for bringing forth into existence, which, whether you are an entrepreneur or not, it is universal and we all have access to it. The story can be, if we choose it to be entrepreneurship, or it could be whatever you choose it to be. However, more accurately put, it will be expressed through you, which we call the authentic self-image or the true self. Each of us are individual expressions of the same consciousness, and each individual expression, being unique, has its own desires, aspirations, and pathways to the fulfillment of whatever the individual desires to experience, which is part of an overall plan which Neville refers to as the promise. This is all part of what he refers to as the play of God, that plays out as theater in our mind and on the screen of space through our conscious awareness, as well as mostly our subconscious awareness, to bring us forth to what we desire to brought forth, as well as he says, dwell in the end and you will hurt no one. Through the journey of realization of what we desire to create, we also inspire and contribute to the building of something greater called the promise. Let's talk about alignment with the five senses via assumption. And the reason why we want to do this is because what we're looking at is five sensory input, data, experience. Most of this five sensory data, interpretation, assumption is based on past conscious or subconscious assumptions that we have affirmed to be true. When we experience it in this outer world, we can experience it fundamentally two ways, and there's varying degrees in between. We either affirm it, as in we like it, we appreciate it, or we don't affirm it, we dislike it. This is not the kind of experience that we want. When we realize that this is all interpretation, five sensory data is data interpreted by ourselves within, based on our assumption, we then realize that we have the power to change our assumptions. Well, what happens when you change the assumption? Well, as you change the assumption, and we've been talking about this for a long period of time now, and many of you have been working with it, you realize that the five sensory data changes. The outer world changes to reflect the assumption. He says, the conscious mind reasons inductively from observation. Okay, that's how the conscious mind aims to understand this world. Inductively reasoning based on observation, experience, and education. Nothing wrong with that. That's just how it works. It therefore finds it difficult to believe what the five senses and inductive reason deny. So that's one of the caveats, is because some might be overly identified with the conscious mind, thinking that's who they are, otherwise known as developing the ego mind. They stick with only observation, experience, and education, and deny any kind of other data that shows up, which we call signs or synchronicities, that reason may appear to deny. The subconscious reasons deductively and is never concerned with the truth or falsity of the premise, but proceeds on the assumption of the correctness of the premise and objectifies results which are consistent with the premise. This distinction must be clearly seen by all who would master the art of praying. No true grasp of the science of prayer can be really obtained until the laws governing the dual nature of consciousness are understood and the importance of the subconscious realized. So it is all one, but we see it as for our own benefit as well as the benefit of all, that the subconscious is greater than the conscious. By giving more power, or more accurately put, realizing that more power is in the subconscious, we automatically begin to change our consciousness around and work with it. Once we have this acceptance, as he says here, no true grasp of the science of prayer can be really understood until the laws governing the dual nature of consciousness are understood. Once we grasp that most of us is subconscious, then we start to look at the five sensory data and say, this five sensory data may appear to deny our assumption, or that which we desire to create, the heart desire. But this is because this five sensory data is an externalization of past assumptions. Once we realize that that is the case, we can then choose to change the assumptions surrounding the five sensory data. And once we have affirmed the assumptions, thus believe the assumptions, which he refers to as prayer, then we will see the five sensory data change. How will it change?
As he tells us in the 55th chapter of Isaiah, your ways are not my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways. So do not ask how it's going to be done. All I have to do is to completely yield to this being within me. For he has ways and means I, on this level of my being, know not of. I rise then under compulsion. And under this compulsion I go through a series of events which will lead up to the fulfillment of that to which I yielded. I assume that it's done. And then I commune with myself and gave thanks within me that it is done.
Now, this may be contrarian and conflicting with the conscious mind. That's why we want to build a relationship between the conscious and the subconscious and allow ourselves to be mostly subconscious. Conscious, as in conscious choice, cause and effect reflection, conscious working with our imagination, but not overly thinking. Because if we overly think, then we are trying to work more with the conscious mind when we should be really allowing the subconscious to express because it's already been done. We have affirmed it. And to not realize that it has already been done is to not live as if it was true in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It's a state of mind. Now, I find this to be akin to what we call flow state or autotelic state. It's a state of mind where you are mostly subconscious. All is happening through you at the right time, at the right place, and you know it. You have inspired action. You know when to let go. You know when to change the assumption. You also know when to accept. And you don't have to think about it. It happens automatically. However, in the earlier stages, because maybe we are overly identified with the conscious mind, we might find ourselves having to cause and effect reflect, to let go consciously of those attributes in which we are trying to control the externalization that is already happening via the subconscious realm. What we are conscious of is constructed out of what we are not conscious of. Not only do our subconscious assumptions influence our behavior, but they also fashion the pattern of our objective existence. So the behavior is governed or expressed through the subconscious assumptions about ourselves and what we call outer world experience, people, environment, circumstance, or information, five sensory data. And the assumptions also fashion the pattern of our objective existence, rearrange the mind within, and the outer world is rearranged to reflect the accuracy of the rearranged mind within. They alone have the power to say, "Let us make man objective manifestations in our image, after our likeness. The whole of creation is asleep within the deep of man, and is awakened to objective existence by his subconscious assumptions. Within that blankness we call sleep, there is a consciousness in unsleeping vigilance, and while the body sleeps, this unsleeping being releases from the treasure house of eternity the subconscious assumptions of man." Now he's referring to also prayer, because this, as mentioned, was taken from his book, The Art of Believing, Prayer, The Art of Believing. So let's talk about prayer. Prayer, the art of believing, what is denied by the senses deals almost entirely with the subconscious. So in order for prayer to be successful, we have to affirm it to be so within the subconscious realm. And the simple way to know, as he states it, is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You know when You have affirmed it, either via visualization, and for many years I've worked with affirmation. I learned this stuff from Think and Grow Rich. He talked about it in the subconscious mind chapter. What I now realize, after working with Neville's information, is this feeling of the wish fulfilled idea is really about the moment you know it is done. The moment you know it is done, everything begins to change. And we live in faith, and everything happens through us. And one of the things that I've learned on this journey is to release within fears, doubts, and indecision, as well as disempowering programming towards myself and others. And as a result of that, I feel a higher degree of flow and allowing, and experience more signs, synchronicities, inner voice conversations, hunches, inspirations that lead me to what I desire to see brought forth. Now, this is what we would call prayer. Now, the prayer can happen in many different ways. It can happen through visualization, through imagination, through affirmation, or creating certain kinds of prayers, traditional prayers, as long as we believe the prayers, which is indicated by this feeling of the wish fulfilled. He says here, through prayer, the subconscious is suggested into acceptance. It starts to go in the subconscious mind, the subconscious realm. Suggested into acceptance of the wish fulfilled, and reasoning deductively, logically unfolds it to its legitimate end. As also what Steve Jobs had mentioned, connecting the dots looking backwards. Once it's brought forth, you can connect the dots looking backwards. And you can ask people, what do you believe is the reason? And they may have a totally different reason than another person, which will also mirror the assumptions of what we believe that they have as far as reasons, to again further affirm that this is a complete externalization of our own consciousness, and we're realizing this more and more so each day. He says, far greater is he that is in you than he that is in this world. Prayer is the key which unlocks the infinite storehouse. Prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the window of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Prayer modifies or completely changes our subconscious assumptions, and a change of assumption is a change of expression. So what we believe and what we assume is changed by prayer, and prayer can take the form of working with the imagination. What would it be like if it was true? Subconscious affirmation, working in a way where you feel either one of those, in a way that affirms it to be true. And by the way, he refers to this a lot in what we call state akin to sleep. He discusses this right here. The subjective mind, being the subconscious mind, is completely controlled by suggestion. Ideas are best suggested when the objective mind is partially subjective. Okay, very important. Objective mind is partially subjective. This is otherwise known to state akin to sleep, which is why I always recommend creating your own affirmations that you can believe more and more so each day, and play them on loop and listen to them while you fall asleep. And notice that when you are caring about the day-to-day the next day, your behaviors, your thoughts, and your emotions will be more reflective to those affirmations. This is done through the power of belief. If you believe that this is possible, then you will start to experience it more so. This is even the case when we refer to hypnosis. So again, the objective mind is partially subjective. That is, when the objective senses are diminished or held in abeyance. He says this partially subjective state can best be described as controlled revery, wherein the mind is passive but capable of functioning with absorption. It is a concentration of attention. There must be no conflict in your mind when you are praying. In other words, when you're more in the state akin to sleep, the overly active conscious mind cannot be critical about the visualizations and the assumptions made through affirmation or any other subconscious work. It starts to step away. And in this process, it is bypassed and the information is affirming on the subconscious. Now, the thing that I found is it's not just in the sleeping state. Certain kinds of music, movies, information in our waking days have the power to bypass our conscious mind. That's why it's important to be aware of the kind of information that we are taking in. There's even information available that many of us consume that have been intentionally constructed to bypass the conscious reasoning and go into the subconscious. We will notice this when we start behaving differently or thinking differently towards ourselves or others. We might find ourselves either more affirmative or in conflict. It's important then to reflect back on what and where did you consume this information. And when you find what and where, you can identify those attributes, should you choose to do so, that put you into a state of mind where you are mostly subconscious and less conscious, thus bypassing. It's important to harmonize the conscious and the subconscious. The conscious mind is important because it helps us with cause and effect reflection, as well as intentionally guiding the visualization, the affirmations, and so forth, and creating them. However, most of the power is in the subconscious, and we want to ensure that what we are allowing into the subconscious realm is in harmony with the kind of life that you want to live and that which you desire to see brought forth. So as stated, it is a concentration of attention. There must be no conflict in your mind when you are praying. Turn from what is to what ought to be. Assume the mood of fulfilled desire. Or another way of looking at it is, you will feel the mood of fulfilled desire. There's a moment where you say, now I know it's done. Now I know it will be brought forth. It will be brought forth into experience. It is in that moment where the prayer has affirmed itself. And thus, we want to construct our scene or affirmations to be one where it's more accepting. For example, when you work with affirmations, if you create affirmations that seem to be too much of a resistance to believe those affirmations, then remember two things. Number one is we might not be working with those affirmations in a state akin to sleep, and our overly thinking conscious mind might be criticizing those affirmations. Or number two, those affirmations weren't written away where they are affirmative. And also, bring yourself more into a state of authentic expression and allowing, rather than forcing the affirmations. Affirmations and prayer or visualization is best done prior to naps, sleep, or when you wake up in the morning. Ideally, I like to choose naps and sleep. During the day, what I am doing is ensuring that I'm consuming information or placing myself in certain environments that are affirmative in some shape or form to that which I desire to see brought forth, the experience. And really, this is about morning routines, your day-to-day workday, your end-of-day conscious rejuvenation or conscious reflection, or doing the things that you really want to do, that are things that you love to do, that bring you joy. It's a state of mind of love. And this is what I recommend to all entrepreneurs on the journey, because then what you'll allow to have expressed through you is the subconscious ideas, hunches, and inspirations, inner voice conversations that will reveal the exact way to bring forth the desires, as well as help you overcome the difficulties or conflicts that you might be experiencing on the journey to the realization of your business success. So as stated, it is a concentration of attention. There must be no conflict in your mind. Conflict or overly critical thinking, not accurate thinking. I believe it's important to evaluate, cause and effect, reflect, but overly critical thinking is going to prevent the prayer from affirming. It's not allowing the affirmation to take place. He says, turn from what is to what ought to be. Assume the mood of fulfilled desire, and by the universal law of reversibility, you will realize your desire. Now, as we talk about this, we have to remember that this is actually one consciousness, the one consciousness in all. So all the subconscious minds are connected. And one of the things that I have experienced in my entrepreneurial journey, as well as the other success endeavors that I've chosen, is the idea of harmonizing with the thoughts of others. What I notice is that I bring forth the individuals that are in harmony, be it clients, team members, vendors, mentors, or whoever, into what I would call automatic mastermind. Napoleon Hill talks about the mastermind alliance. You will notice these individuals showing up synchronistically, and they will be part of your mastermind, or will be part of your team, or they will be your clients. And they will show up in the most interesting way. And he describes exactly how this works over here. He says, the subjective mind is the diffused consciousness that animates the world. It is the spirit that giveth life. In all substance is a single soul subjective mind. Through all creation runs this one unbroken subjective mind. So the subconscious mind is connected to the subconscious mind of all. We call this superconscious sometimes, and I refer to this as the superconscious, where all subconscious minds are connected. Thought and feeling fused into beliefs impress modifications upon it. Very important. Thoughts and feelings fused into beliefs impress modifications upon it. Charge it with a mission, which mission it faithfully executes. So again, he says, this is very important. Thought and feeling fused into beliefs impress modifications upon it. Charge it with a mission, which mission it faithfully executes. And then he says, man transmits ideas to the subconscious through his feelings. The subconscious transmits ideas from mind to mind through telepathy. Now, this was also what I had read in Think and Grow Rich. He says it very clearly in Think and Grow Rich. And the moment I began to believe, and more accurately put, realize that this is what it was, all the times where I synchronistically would meet the right people at the right time made so much sense. And as I continue to affirm this information and continue to surround myself with information that continues to affirm this, I notice this happens more often. Because if we surround ourselves with information that denies this, then we'll find that we'll forget this. A lot of this has to do with remembering than it has to do with learning new things. All of this information we inherently already know because it is one with us. It is in the subconscious realm. It says, the only ideas they subconsciously reject are your ideas of them, which they could not wish to be true of anyone. The golden rule. Whatever they could wish for others can be believed of them, and by the law of belief, which governs subjective reasoning, they are compelled to subjectively accept and therefore objectively express accordingly. We come together in the spirit of harmony. For example, you have an idea of building a business, creating an entrepreneurial endeavor, creating success, and it's not just in the entrepreneurial space, whatever that is. And it may involve people. It may involve bringing people together. Once this idea is impressed on the subconscious via prayer, either affirmation or visualization, and you can use his very powerful process, which I've worked with, although I, as mentioned, come from a background of Think and Grow Rich, so I use the audio affirmations. What happens is that's a form of prayer. It's affirmed in the subconscious, and then things begin to happen. People start to show up. People start to behave differently towards you. I've noticed the same people behaving differently to mirror the assumption that was affirmed on the subconscious. And they reflect accordingly. And they show up in the spirit of harmony. All of a sudden, those relationships or those connections that appeared inharmonious appear more so harmonious each day. And that is the proof that even though we are talking about the dual nature of consciousness, that in essence, this is actually one consciousness, the one consciousness in all. You want to copy this mind map? The link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.